In 1936, a man stood in front of a portrait of himself and called it a lie. Soviet officials had erased him from every photograph, every record, every memory of the revolution he helped build. He should have screamed. He should have fought back with everything he had left. Instead, he nodded. He agreed with his erasure. He thanked the men who destroyed him. What happens inside a human mind that makes a person defend the very system erasing their existence? This isn't fiction. This is one of history's strangest psychological patterns. Erased people defending their own erasure. Before we uncover the disturbing mechanism behind it, hit subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from. And if this unsettles you, the way it unsettled me researching it, smash that like button. Because what you're about to learn explains more about obedience than you might be ready to accept. The Soviet Union had a name for what happened to disgraced officials: non-persons. They didn't just lose their jobs, they lost their faces, physically removed from photographs, retouched out of history books, deleted from the collective memory of a nation. Nikolai Yezhov once stood beside Stalin in a now famous photograph, walking along a canal, trusted and powerful. Within a few years, Soviet technicians airbrushed him out completely, leaving only empty water where a man used to stand. But the truly disturbing part isn't the erasure itself. It's what happened inside the minds of the erased. Survivors of purges, when interrogated, frequently confessed to crimes they never committed. They signed documents admitting to sabotage, espionage, and treason. Accusations with no evidence, no logic, no truth behind them. Psychologists studying these confessions later asked an uncomfortable question. Why would someone confess to destroying their own life? The answer wasn't simple coercion. Many victims weren't just tortured into compliance. They seemed to genuinely believe they deserved what was happening. Something inside the human mind had shifted, bending reality itself to protect a system that was actively destroying the person inside it. To understand this bizarre loyalty, researchers turned to a phenomenon hiding in plain sight since childhood. Psychologists call it identification with the aggressor, a defense mechanism first studied in abused children who, instead of hating their abuser, mimicked them, defended them, even loved them. The logic seems impossible until you see it from inside a trapped mind. If the powerful figure is wrong, then the world is chaotic and unsafe. But if the powerful figure is right, then there's still order. There's still a reason. There's still a way to survive. Soviet citizens facing erasure weren't just choosing between truth and lies. They were choosing between an unbearable reality and a survivable one. Historian accounts reveal something even stranger. Many erased officials helped write their own confessions, suggesting crimes more severe than what they were originally accused of. One former Communist Party member described feeling almost relieved once he confessed, like a weight had lifted, even though the confession would cost him everything. This wasn't simple fear-talking. This was the mind actively reconstructing reality to make the unbearable feel meaningful. Modern psychologists now recognize this pattern beyond Stalinist Russia, in cults, in abusive households, in corporate cultures built on fear. But the Soviet case revealed something even more disturbing. The mechanism didn't just affect individuals. It could be engineered, deliberately, at scale. If this mechanism could be engineered, then someone had to discover how to trigger it on purpose. Soviet interrogators didn't rely only on physical torture. They used something more insidious. Sleep deprivation combined with relentless repetition of the same accusation over and over, for days. The mind, deprived of rest and bombarded with one unchanging narrative, eventually stops resisting and starts absorbing. This is where psychology reveals its darkest secret. Humans don't just break under pressure. They rebuild their identity around whatever survives the breaking. Once a person internalizes the accusation, something remarkable happens. The shame of being a traitor becomes easier to carry than the terror of being powerless. At least a traitor has agency. At least a traitor made a choice. Powerlessness offers nothing. No story, no explanation, no sense of control. This single psychological trait became the hidden engine behind the entire system of erasure. Officials didn't defend their persecutors out of loyalty. They defended them because the alternative, accepting random, meaningless destruction, was psychologically unbearable. Researchers later found similar patterns in hostage situations, abusive relationships, and authoritarian regimes across completely different cultures and eras. The human mind, it turns out, will rewrite its own story rather than face a universe with no story at all. And that need just opened a door no one expected. Here's the revelation that changes everything you've just learned. Erasure wasn't a punishment. It was a recruitment tool. Soviet officials discovered that publicly erased people, once they confessed and conformed, became the most loyal defenders of the very system that destroyed them. Why? Because defending the system meant defending the meaning they had just built to survive their own destruction. To question the system now would mean admitting their suffering had been pointless, and the mind will do almost anything to avoid that conclusion. This is the same mechanism researchers later identified in survivors of high control groups, abusive marriages, and even certain corporate cultures built on humiliation and reward. The victim becomes the strongest advocate for their own victimization, not because they're weak, but because the alternative feels like psychological annihilation. Nikolai Yezhov, the man erased from that famous photograph, reportedly begged Stalin for forgiveness before his execution, still defending the system that had already decided to kill him. He never stopped believing the cause was righteous, even as the cause consumed him entirely. This single fact still terrifies modern psychologists. Humans aren't only capable of accepting their own destruction, they can be engineered to participate in justifying it. And once you see this mechanism clearly, you start noticing it everywhere. In history, in relationships, in systems still operating today, waiting to be recognized. The erased never truly disappeared. They became something more useful, living proof that the system was always right, even when it destroyed the people who built it. This isn't ancient history locked away in Soviet archives. This same psychological mechanism quietly operates today, in workplaces, relationships, and movements that demand loyalty over truth. So ask yourself honestly, if your reality were rewritten tomorrow, would you recognize the lie? Or would you, like so many before you, defend your own erasure?